Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this executive summary, really essentially a speed flyby on the whole topic of the business canvas, what it is, what it means, where it comes from, why you need to, as not only a business to succeed, but this particular presentation is focused from a startup or from an organization. Perhaps you're here because you won an NSF Phase 1 and now you need to take it up to the next level for a Phase 2. And that's really going to be my focus today, as I will shamelessly plagiarize from several sources and say in the front here that none of this is original material. It all comes from others, and I'm here to really evangelize the genuine value. So where did this notion of a business canvas come from? It was actually created by a Swiss theorist back in about 2004 named Alexander Osterwald. And with the help of Yves Pignot, his colleague, they essentially created a one-page visual model to break down and visualize and analyze what your business is, and basically describe and design a business model effectively. Some years later, in 2010 or so, this book came out, and there's a couple in this series from this publisher that I have read, and I highly recommend that for those that really want to take this seriously. And the amazing thing about the business model generation book is that you didn't just have a couple of 3-4 brainchilds working on something. You actually had like 470 some people in bunch of countries worldwide really contribute this, all with the experience of getting a company from a startup or from an innovation into a commercialization. One of the first things we need to understand is that as a startup or as maybe it's a joint venture or a new business, a new idea, product launch, whatever your role or your participation in this endeavor is, that mindset is completely different than an organization that's been in place or a business that's running. So we're in a search mode as opposed to an execution mode. And that's where we need to learn things like the business model, startup team building. That team is a little different. Everything from R&D, product development to the functional units of an organization. So effectively, the point here is that we need to think like a founder's team. And founders teams and startups really look at the customer development side of the equation and then worry about the execution and not focus on the functional side so much because that develops out of a well-executed business canvas. The bottom line is that more startups fail not because their innovation wasn't great or the idea or even the patents. There are more patents and ideas than there are customers that buy them. Okay, so the failure of most companies or startups is not the product development or the R&D or the engineering. It's finding the fit between what you're offering and what the customers are willing and going to give you money for. You see, real innovation is making it from coming up with an idea to actually having a profitable business sustained, and that the benchmark for an NSF2 award or even for other investors or company is no different. There are these valleys of death, and these valleys of death are really throughout the life cycle of a potential organization. Think of University Green as R&D in general for the time being. But for those of you that those of us who won an NSF Phase 1 award, that was the investment to really essentially provide you a chance at a proof of concept and coming up with the idea and the technology and the investment it takes to do that. The real question now becomes the commercialization. And that's where we're at right now. What is our commercialization plan so that we make it through this valley of death and then also have a sustained vision for the future? Okay, so you got some research funds to get your innovation to the point where you think you might have a proof of concept, but now you need really the money to be able to get you to a commercialization plan. So the question becomes, how do you convince an investor like the NSF to give you some more money and to convince them that you will make it, you can make it through this valley. Let's take a look at the valley of death here, particularly with, like, say, the medical or pharmaceutical industry. You see the early discovery phase, and that's where I-Corps participates a lot of, obviously, NSF grants and such, extending into part of the valley of death, which for the medical industry is that preclinical development and the clinical trials period. And based on how your business plan is, and which essentially stems from your business canvas, you can see the potential return, if much of any, or great, from such investment or such a canvas getting you there. So it essentially boils down to product discovery, no different than R&D, discovering, trial and error, getting, a certain idea, talking to your customer, getting quantitative and qualitative feedback. And essentially what you're after is in the end, something that is that fit. The question is not, can you go to the next step? No, the question is, can you contribute or come up with something that has exponential, diverse, greater impact, good, and X-fold return on investment? That's what it's about. And so how do you achieve that? Whether it's an investment from NSF or set more investment from a customer, is to understand what a business model is and how you're going to get them that return on investment. And that is to know what a business model is and how you as an organization or as an investment are going to create value for yourself while delivering products and services for customers. The goal here is to go beyond just the customer discovery and thinking you have a customer, but actually validating that and understanding what that strategy is so that you can actually develop an operating plan and go develop the processes. And you need to be agile during that tough process. So this canvas gives you kind of literally like your paint board, your whiteboard, to be able to, but guide you to what it is you need to address to get there. And let's just look at those elements, and we're going to the rest of this presentation, but it is boils down to 9 elements. So we have these 9 elements: value proposition, customer segments, channels, and customer relationships, which lead up to or have a way of creating revenue for the company, which needs to be backed by the key resources that you have, the partners that you have working with you, and what the key activities that will support and back the value proposition to customer fit. And along with number 9, the cost structure that will allow you to be profitable. Now, this has been looked at in different orders, but for the sake of this presentation, we're going to follow what I believe is the original order and the one that I like to look at it most of the time. And in the end, it doesn't really matter as long as you truly understand the inner relationship between you and I. Before we actually jump into each of the 9 elements, let's just take a minute and a half and take a look at a theater, a business analogy of this topic.
By now, you probably know the business model canvas pretty well. With 9 basic building blocks, you can describe any business model in a more tangible, holistic, and visual way. To better understand the dynamics of the business model canvas, we can use the metaphor of a theater. Imagine the right-hand side of the canvas as the front stage of your business model, just like the front stage of a theater that is visible to the audience. The front stage is where you interact with your customers, clients, and users. Like in a theater, if we go behind the curtains, we end up backstage. The backstage of your business model is what makes the show in the front possible, but most customers won't see who's back here or what they're doing. The front stage is what represents value to your customers, clients, and users, and what they're willing to pay for. The backstage makes it all possible, and it drives cost. At the end of the day, the equation is pretty simple. A sound business model requires your revenues at least as big and hopefully much bigger than your costs. That outcome is called a profit. Now that you've got a handle on the business model theatre, will you be able to put on a show?
So regardless of what business we're in, okay, there are required 5 steps to any sales process. It's a profitable value creation from a business. And that's the identify, qualify, and specify. Give a quote, a price offering to somebody, close that business, take the order, and actually deliver on the goods that you have an invoice and dollars created or revenues generated. I like to look at it very much as in boiling down to the Sherlock process, you know? What, who, what, why, where, when, and then within the context of the business canvas itself and how that translates into a business plan. And where do you start with this process? It's this intensive boot camp, this intensive discovery process, no different than scientific research and development, where you don't have a product to sell or a message to the market. You really don't have a defined product or a cash value proven. You have some hypotheses and you want to go through a design and testing and insight process. And for us and for many, it's a 9 to 12 week program doing 30 to 50 ecosystem interviews. Quite a laborious commitment required. So that you can, in fact, go ahead and fill out these 9 elements of your canvas and establish a groundwork for a commercialization plan. And then really you essentially go through and do an honest self-assessment of like highlighting some of them. The green ones are the ones you feel really strong, you're in a good position to handle. The yellow are kind of on the border and some concerns there, but we have a good start. And the red ones or orange ones are really, hey, these are the areas we're definitely weak in. And don't just listen to yourself. Listen to the ecosystem and those buyer architects types you'll have, those potential customers we'll talk about in a minute. And this really starts by understanding where you fit in your entire ecosystem, your entire family of industry, who buys from you and who enjoys your products but might buy through somebody else. And how does that market or that industry or segments, how does the process flow in that business? So let's dive into the first two, the value proposition and the customer segments. And these two have a very unique symbiotic relationship that has a must that must be understood here. You see, this is where the magic has to come. What and why is a customer buying from? And understanding the persona, or the call it archetype, where their pains and their gains are important to them in their life relative to the job or the problem that they work that they need to do. What is it that we're offering that increases or creates that gain or kills pain that they're having through our products and services? And this is what we call a market fit, the golden opportunity for most investors and new innovation that really becomes commercialized and makes a difference. And how do we do this? We do this by talking to a customer or our segments or our marketplace, even if they're not a direct buyer or not. But we understand the various and we learn about the various profiles that are out there that are down in the food chain somewhere along the line for what it is we're bringing to market or offering. This is looking at their job and the job that the things that they need to solve on the job. So not just the stuff that they do every day, but their problem solving side of their requirement. What kind of solutions do they currently use and how do they buy? Most importantly, from a psyche standpoint, where are their pain spots and what's really important or would make, what kind of gains, what would make it really different that they would perceive as a significant gain in their life. And then on sidebar are kind of things like what influences them and what are they consider the barriers. In some cases, it's raw costs. In other cases, it's organizational. And maybe in other cases, it's just an educational type of a factor. But the point being here is that you really understand your potential buyer or customer profile. So now a part of this archetype profiling process is to determine the importance level and the satisfaction level of these buyers, of these segments, or specifically each segment itself. And when you look at this at 4 quadrants, you're really talking about wanting to be in the lower right-hand corner. And you need to do this for each of the profiles, so each of the customers or types of customer segments, number 2 on the canvas, the customer segments that you want to target and go after. Let's break away again to watch a video, about 4.5 minutes, that really does a better job than I can.
Let's look at the value proposition canvas, a tool that will help you design, test, build, and manage great customer value propositions. It's like a plugin to the business model canvas. The tool is based on 2 elements of your business model: the customer segment who you intend to create value for, and the value proposition which you believe will attract customers. With the value proposition canvas, you can map out both in more granularity and show the fit between what you offer and what customers want. The customer segment profile describes the characteristics of your customers in more detail. The profile is composed of the jobs your customers are trying to get done in their work and in their lives, the related pains outlining the negative aspects they hate or would like to avoid, and third, the gains describing the positive outcomes and benefits which your customers would love to have. Now let's look at the profile in more detail. Jobs describe an important issue your customers are trying to solve in their work or in their lives. It could be the tasks they're trying to perform and complete, the problems they are trying to solve, or the needs they are trying to satisfy. And then jobs can have a functional, social, or emotional intent. Now, some jobs will be crucial to their customers, others will be trivial. Then the second aspect here are the pains describing anything that annoys your customers before, during, and after getting a job done. This could be undesired costs and situations, negative emotions, or risks. And again, some customer pains will be severe, others light. And the third aspect of the profile are the gains describing the outcomes and benefits your customers require, expect, desire, or would be surprised by. This includes things like functional utility, social gains, positive emotions, and cost savings. And again, some outcomes and benefits will be more relevant to customers than others. These 3 elements of the profile describe the customer characteristics that you can observe in the market. Now let's look at the value proposition map, describing the features of your value proposition, which you are designing to address your customers' most important jobs, pains, and gains. The map is composed of the products and services your value proposition is built around, the pain relievers outlining how your products and services alleviate customer pains, and third, the gain creators describing the positive outcomes and benefits your products and services create for your customers. Now let's look at the map in more detail. First, the products and services simply outline the bundle of products and services that you're offering customers to help them get a functional, social, or emotional job done and to address their pains and gains. Now, second aspect here, the pain relievers make explicit how your products and services will alleviate specific customer pains before, while, and after the customer is trying to get a job done. They show which of all the customer pains your value proposition is addressing by eliminating or reducing them. And the next aspect here are the gain creators. They make explicit how your products and services create customer gains. They show which of all the customer gains your value proposition is addressing by creating benefits and outcomes. Now, you have achieved a so-called problem-solution fit when the features of your value proposition perfectly match the characteristics of your customer segment profile. When the market validates this match and your value proposition gets traction with real customers, you have achieved a so-called product market fit. But don't forget, successful businesses have more than just a great value proposition. They have a great business model that makes a customer value proposition possible. Now, do you have what it takes to design great business models and value propositions with pain relievers and gain creators that match real customer jobs, pains, and gains? Class dismissed.
So the next step is just to simply take that model, that canvas, and fill it out. Do the due diligence on yourself, on ourselves, and place our differentiators there. And so now that we've taken a look at the value proposition and number 2, customer segments, let's spend a little bit of time on the topic of channels and customer relationships. The topic of channels is very much a how contributor to your plan. How are you going to sell your company, your product, your services, what you're offering, your value proposition to your customers? Are they going to buy it through somebody else, from you directly? And those nuances have an impact on the plan that you execute and the foresight that you might believe you have. So like the previous slide that focused more on physical channels, there's also an entire web or virtual channel, if you will, that has evolved even over the last 20 years, 15, to in itself have different players and different tiers and different behavior characteristics. Another thing that needs to be considered and kept in mind is the relationship between the complexities of a market and a particular product. So this screen here, a graph, really takes a high-level snapshot at, let's say, the IT industry, where the further to the right up you go, the way you sell it and how you're selling it to the buyer itself and the relationship of the user of your innovation is much more complex. And so also the marketing complexity yields a different kind of a volume metric than the entire other end of the spectrum, where let's say you're a very good keyboard producer, but you're not really dealing with the end customer, and you don't need high-end evangelists to get the message and to get that transaction done. This is an extremely tough topic to cover in the 2 slides that I'm going to try to cover in, but it's really about customer acquisition, customer retention, and customer lifetime value. How and from where are you going to get your customers, keep them, and grow them? This topic boils down to acquiring customers, in a business term referred to as a cost of acquisition, your cost of retaining or keeping your customers, and how long you do it. That's the impact of end value, because the lifetime value only starts from when you purchase. It doesn't start from the start of your sales and marketing activity. Let's talk revenue model. This is a topic alone we could spend days on, just not only to better understand, but to actually do the homework can take weeks. But for what is the customer paying? What is that value? And this relates back to the archetype and their satisfaction level relative to their importance level will also determine what value is. Remember, price is not a function of some math or some marketing algorithm. It's what price is really what a function of what the customer is willing to pay for it. Okay, so what's your strategy to get there? How are you going to price it? And in end effect, how does a company make money from each of these customer segments? One of the most important things drilled into us, especially during the boot camp and the discipline of understanding this whole Canvas topic is, and this is important if you're pursuing an NSF Phase 2 or really investors, is what is going to be the beachhead market? Where are you going to break not only the first few customers, but are really going to get yourself on strong footing out of the gate? So the revenue model is based very much on the choices that you take relative to channels and your relationships and how you reach your customer segments. So these are the areas that need to really be understood and defined within the context of what the organization itself wants to do inside the canvas. All of this collectively then drives your pricing strategy. Are you going to sell direct? And what is the makeup of the cost of goods, the profit and the overhead you want to do, plus your R&D expense? And that's going to be your revenue and a little consideration for discount to the end user. Are you going to sell through a reseller, that type of a channel? Or in the context of, let's say, an OEM channel, which could also be analogous, let's say, to distributors in a country with multiple resellers for a product. All of these types of factors impact your profitability and how you need to price to get that channel producing. I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit here on. The next element is your key resources. What do you have financially, physically, intellectually, from human resource capital? What are the most important assets that this company has to get the job done? In addition, number 7, what key partnerships partners do we have? These can be suppliers, these can be outside resources that you can't afford, but you have a mutual relationship with. And what are those activities? The one thing to watch out here, particularly with respect to investment or continued funding, is you do not want to be necessarily reliant on outside partners for you to deliver, but what they bring to you enables you to deliver and deliver it in a unique or better way than otherwise could be done. And what key activities are we going to, as an organization or as an investment or as a next step, commercialization within our commercialization plan, do that are the most important for us to make this business model work? Okay, inside, outside, getting every one of the other elements to function effectively together. And lastly, what is the cost structure? What are the costs to get this done? Look at this in detail. Budget it out, try to define as much as you can with respect to direct and indirect costs in accounting terms. What are you getting done internally and what do you need to do and pay for to get things done outside? And that within the context of number 5, your revenue model needs to come out to a profit. And it needs to be at a profit that's attractive on a scalable method, on a scalable basis. And so now you're in a better position to really make that pivot from discovery to validation, and the commercialization plan you put in place and execute on and its results will get you to the execution side of the business itself. So fill out the canvas. Take an honest assessment of what it is you're up to and where your strengths and weaknesses and where you need help. And key is identifying the costs and the implications of not receiving funding or the investment it takes, whether capital or talent or treasury or time to get the job done. So with the lessons learned in this business canvas and the diligence to go through that process, you can grow. You can go from a phase 1 to a phase 2. You can find investors that'll take you to that next level because you're not completely there, but you have the plan to do so. Obviously, there are detailed requirements if you're submitting for a particular fund, NSF, SBIR, NIH, they all have their specific guidelines and requirements. But essentially, you're outlining and convincing people you have defined very clear focus, objectives, and milestones according to a commercialization plan and why you believe it'll work, and the detail to the cost structure of how that investment will be spent. So, what's your business canvas? What are we going to do and guide us to that next level? I want to thank you for your time. Go out and discover, and then you have something to execute on. Reach out to me anytime. Look forward to any follow-up. Thanks.